Chapter 1. The river churned violently as the prince thrashed against the current. His black hair matted to his face as his elaborate silk clothing weighed him down. His perfect white teeth chattered as he called out desperately for aid, but his cries were drowned out by the roaring water. "Help! Someone, please!" The prince's voice cracked with panic as he spotted the approaching waterfall. His fingers scrabbled uselessly against slick rocks as the river dragged him closer to the edge. From the shadows of the forest, a massive figure watched with cold amusement. Rogar the orc had been tracking the pompous prince for days, waiting for the perfect moment to complete his contract. His bare, muscular green chest gleamed with sweat, and the prince's fertile scratches crisscrossed his thick arms. The queen's instructions had been clear: dispose of the prince before he could reach Snow White. And he was not to kiss the princess, no matter what. The prince's final scream echoed through the canyon as he plummeted over the edge of the waterfall. Rogar approached the cliff's edge, his muscular form casting a long shadow in the setting sun. He watched until the waters below settled, then turned away with a grunt of satisfaction. It was time to collect his reward. The throne room echoed with Rogar's heavy footsteps as he approached the queen's golden throne. The monarch's pale face was emotionless, her sharp nails immediately tapping on the arm of her chair. "Your Majesty," Rogar rumbled, his deep voice reverberating off the marble walls. "The deed is done. The prince will trouble you no more." The queen's perfectly painted lips twisted into a sneer as she peered down at him. "And where, pray tell, is his heart?" Rogar's yellow eyes narrowed. "The river took him. There was no retrieving the body." "Then you waste my time." The queen's voice turned to ice. "Return when you have completed your task properly. And remember our agreement. You are not to go anywhere near the sleeping princess or kiss her. Do I make myself clear?" Rage flared in Rogar's chest, but he kept his massive fists clenched at his sides. "Crystal clear, Your Majesty," he growled through gritted teeth, turning on his heel and storming from the throne room. The guards scattered before him like leaves in the wind. He had tracked the prince through mud and rain, waited patiently for the perfect moment, and watched him disappear over the falls. Yet here he was, unpaid and insulted. The queen's words about not touching the princess echoed through his head. It was time to show the old hag what happened when you messed with an orc. It was time to pay the princess a visit. The glass coffin lay in a small clearing, bathed in sunlight that filtered through the forest canopy. 7 dwarves stood guard around it, their faces set with grim determination as Rogar approached. "Stand back," the eldest dwarf commanded, brandishing his pickaxe. "You shall not disturb the princess's rest." The others raised their tools, shovels, picks, and mining implements, forming a brave but fertile barrier around the coffin. Rogar almost admired their courage. Almost. With one sweep of his muscular arm, he sent them tumbling like skittles, their weapons clattering across the forest floor. Their shouts of protest faded as he approached the crystal casket. Rogar paused, looking down at Snow White through the glass. Her face was serene in its enchanted sleep, dark lashes resting against her porcelain cheeks. Her raven hair spilled around her like silk, a stark contrast to her pale skin. Something stirred in his chest, an unfamiliar feeling that gave him pause. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. There was a peace about her that called to something deep within him, something that had been alone for far too long. Behind him, the dwarves were regrouping, muttering among themselves as they retrieved their scattered weapons. Their words reached his ears. Monster, brute, beast. Names he had heard all his life. But for once, they didn't anger him. His attention remained fixed on the sleeping princess. "The queen was very specific about you," he murmured, his rough voice unusually gentle. "What is it she's so afraid of?" His large hands, calloused from years of battle, carefully lifted the glass lid. The scent of wildflowers and honey wafted up, along with something else. Magic, ancient and powerful. "Well, Your Highness," Rogar growled softly. "Let's give the queen something to really worry about." He leaned down, his heart thundering in his chest. Time seemed to slow as his lips met hers in a gentle kiss. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Snow White's eyes fluttered open, eyes as deep and dark as the forest itself. They fixed on Rogar with an intensity that made his breath catch. "You," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. Her fingers traced the scar that ran along his jaw, showing no fear of his tusks or his green skin. "I've been dreaming of you." Rogar stood frozen, caught in her gaze. This wasn't how curses were supposed to work. Princesses didn't look at orcs the way she was looking at him, with wonder, with longing, with desire. "My hero," Snow White breathed, sitting up in her crystal bed. "My love." The dwarves gasped collectively, their weapons clattering to the ground. But Rogar barely heard them. He was lost in Snow White's eyes, in the way she smiled at him as if he were the answer to every prayer she'd ever made. "You are magnificent," Snow White breathed, her dark eyes wide with wonder. Before Rogar could react, she threw herself against his broad chest, her arms wrapping around his thick neck. Such powerful arms, such noble features. How could I have dreamed of anyone else? Rogar staggered back, caught off balance by both her words and her sudden embrace. His large hands hovered uncertainly in the air, torn between pushing her away and drawing her closer. "My love," she continued, her fingers tracing the muscles of his arms. "Every scar tells a story of your bravery. Every battle mark only enhances your beauty. You are everything I've ever wanted." Behind them, a dwarf let out a strangled cry and collapsed to his knees, tearing at his beard in anguish. "No, no, no," he wailed, pounding his fists against the forest floor. "We waited so long, tended to her day and night, and she wakes up for an orc?" The other dwarves watched in stunned silence as their brother thrashed on the ground, leaves and dirt clinging to his now disheveled beard. One removed his cap and wrung it between his hands, tears gathering in his eyes. "Princess," Rogar rumbled, his deep voice tinged with uncertainty as Snow White continued to lavish him with affection. "You're not thinking clearly. The sleeping curse." "The curse opened my eyes," she declared passionately, pressing herself closer against Rogar's hard, muscular chest. "I saw you in my dreams, my warrior. Your strength, your solitude, your wild heart that matches my own. How could I want some pampered prince when I could have you?" A dwarf's sobs echoed through the clearing as Snow White's hands explored Rogar's broad shoulders without a hint of shyness, letting out a soft gasp. The orc stood frozen, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief, completely unprepared for this turn of events. He had come seeking revenge against the queen, but instead found himself being embraced by the most beautiful woman in the kingdom, who somehow found his tusks and green skin attractive. Snow White's fingers tangled in Rogar's dark hair as she pulled him closer, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. The glass coffin creaked beneath them as Snow White perched on its edge. Rogar's massive form bent over her, One hand braced against the crystal surface, while the other cradled her face with surprising gentleness. "My warrior," she whispered against his mouth, completely ignoring the scandalized gasps from her former caretakers. "Take me here and now." "I love you, Snow White," he rasped, his deep voice filled with tenderness. "And I love you, my Green Knight," she replied, her fingers carding through his thick black hair. The two lovers remained locked in an embrace, basking in the afterglow of their lovemaking. In the distance, a dwarf's mournful cries could be heard, but neither Rogar nor Snow White paid him any heed.
Thank you for listening to Snow White's Orc Lover. Find the full short story with the spicy scenes on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. Find more spicy stories by Beatrix Steam and free ebooks at beatrixsteam.com.